Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage ALEC Board Member and ALEC 2017 National Chair, Indiana Senator Jim Buck.
Well, good morning to each of you. Thank you so much for being here. Indianapolis is known as a city that welcomes anyone that comes to our community. ALEC has been tremendous in this particular event, welcoming legislators and private sector from all over the country. So we're delighted to have you here. I hope you continue to enjoy your stay. Be sure and fellowship with one another. This is a great opportunity to learn from each other. We'll take this time to ask the Lord's blessing on our food. Bow your heads with me if you would. Father God, we are so grateful for your mercy, your generosity, and above all, your forgiveness. Father, we just pray that you'll continue to watch over us as we meet as various leaders from all parts of our country. Lord, we pray you'll give us wisdom, give us patience, give us understanding of one another and what we are facing in different parts of this country. Collectively, Lord, I ask you'll give us wisdom. There is so much we can ask for, but wisdom is key to everything. So I pray you'll strengthen us through this food, nourish our bodies that we'll have strength for the day. Bless those that have prepared it. We are grateful for their service to us. Now guide and direct the rest of this day, we pray. As we go home, we pray you'll give us a safe journey. All this we ask in Christ's blessed name. Amen. Well, it's my honor to introduce to you our Speaker of the House in Indiana, Todd Huston. I remember last year when it was directed to the Speaker if he would be willing to help organize this event. Without hesitation, he said, I'll be glad to. Turned directly to his assistant, Marin, said, we can do this, can't we? And so off they went. But I wanted you to know, each of you have your speaker. And Todd's been at this for 5 years. Prior to that, he was on Ways and Means, had a good working knowledge of what it meant to balance a budget, make hard decisions. In that 5 years, Todd's seen good times and, in essence, bad times as revenue forecasts didn't come in like we wanted. But I know, as speaking as a senator, it is such a privilege to have such cooperation between the House and the Senate. And that truly goes, as you all know, to the leadership of the House and the Senate. We've had a great cooperation with the governor, delighted that we could get through what we've gotten through. So with great pleasure and honor, I'd like to introduce to you our Speaker of the House, Todd Huston.
Well, good morning. It is my privilege this morning to introduce our fireside chat, which is going to be led by ALEC's president, Jonathan Williams, and he'll be interviewing my friend, Indiana's Governor, Mike Braun. In 2013, I was elected to the Indiana legislature, Indiana State House, and quickly met my best legislative friend, and his name was Steve Braun. Steve and I have had lunch most days in the legislature. We'd sit and talk about things that we saw and things we liked and things that we didn't. And it was just one of the best friendships, one of the more meaningful friendships of my life. So in 2014, Steve told me he was going to go and join then Governor Mike Pence's administration. But he said, it'll be okay. I'm sending another Braun's coming to Indianapolis. And in 2015, his brother Mike was elected from Jasper, Indiana. This was Mike's continual service, as Mike had previously served on a school board in his home community. And Mike quickly came on to the Ways and Means Committee. And I learned that Mike was much like his brother, extraordinarily bright, an incredible, successful businessman, and someone that is deeply devoted to his family. So we had the privilege of serving together for 3 years until Mike took a very bold step and decided that he wanted to run for the United States Senate. And in 2018, we were blessed to have Senator Braun, or Mike Braun, become Indiana's senator in Washington, D.C. But in 2024, then Senator Braun decided he wanted to come back home, rightfully, and serve our great state in a different capacity, and as a governor. He won a decisive victory last November and then hit the ground running. So Governor Braun has led on helping us not just create historic property tax reform, property tax savings, but also historic property tax reform. Senator Braun is still a hard time, and sometimes we'll say senator, a lot of the introductions in that title. Governor Braun has brought his entrepreneurial spirit to help us streamline Indiana government, make it more efficient, and make it better for the people that it's served. He's heavily focused, I'm sure you'll hear him talk today, about reducing healthcare costs for Hoosiers. He's focused on making sure that Indiana has the energy that we need for our growing economy. But most importantly, Governor Braun brings a passion for his hometown of Jasper, for the state of Indiana, and to this country each and every day in this office. We're blessed to have Mike Braun as our governor. So with that, I want to introduce Jonathan and Indiana's 52nd governor and my great friend, Mike Braun.
Good morning again, everyone. We're really excited to have you back with us, Governor. This isn't the first time we've done this. For those of you that have been at ALEC meetings, we've had this fireside chat together, you and I, for this will be our third time, twice as a U.S. Senator. And so you're the living embodiment of the ALEC principle of federalism, taking it from Washington back to the states. How's the new hat fitting? And things are going well here in Indiana.
I always get the question asked, well, how is the transition going from being a senator to a governor? And I grew a business in the logistics field in distribution. And I told Maureen the thing that hit me hardest in a good way was that I eliminated 420 plane trips. We're roughly in session 35 weeks a year in that job. Everything I love to do is right back here. In those 6 years, I was marooned in D.C. 7 times. Amy Coney Barrett was one, CARES Act, 2 impeachments, and 3 budget dust-ups. So the logistics of being here has made a big difference, and what a pleasure to get along with a legislature that is a supermajority compared to having to get 60 senators to agree to something, to really get something done there outside of budget and reconciliation, and that's got its own drama. So I made that a joyful experience and would do it again. Huge believer in term limits at the federal level. And until we get them and a balanced budget amendment, don't think that it's going to be preemptively, proactively fixed. We're just watching the opening act, and look how hard it was, and it's still not done, to actually get back $9 billion on a deficit that's over $2 trillion each year. We don't have those issues to deal with. We're dealing with all the opportunities of a well-run state government hit the ground running, and what we're going to get done over the next 3.5 to 7.5 years is going to be impressive. I think folks across the country are already taking notice. So you can see I kind of like the new gig.
Yes, very clear. That's great. So on the education freedom movement, Wednesday here was Education Day. As you know, we had Secretary McMahon with us. Indiana's been a longtime leader in school choice, and you're part of the school choice revolution in parental empowerment now with 17 states. What's next in your administration on education and workforce development?
Secretary McMahon and I were together up at Purdue looking at a subject that'll probably come up. We toured their leading edge presence on the whole energy discussion, but here it was clear she and the administration there would be real interested in getting that back to where it always belonged, to where we're not dependent on their resources. That's fickle. And we're at the leading edge there. Indiana, way before I got into the legislature, was pushing in that direction. And we're going to take it to that next level, those new horizons. And we're there in many respects. But this was the first time in our state's history where we froze tuition across all public universities. And what an accomplishment. Purdue had set the bar for the 14th year. And when our own Commission of Higher Education thought that would be a good idea to do across the board, our universities maybe didn't embrace it, but they've taken it on. That's just a little bit of what you can expect in the future. And when it comes to education, parents need to be in the driver's seat, and we need to start that journey K through 12, especially mid-elementary, to where we give them great options on good outcomes, and that's not always going to be a four-year degree. It's going to be workforce. The jobs that would add $3 to $4 billion to our own state economy need a better high school education. Apprenticeships, way of looking at it very similar to the way it was when we went to grade school and high school. I think we, as what we've done so far, can lead in the nation on what that right mix is, to where our kids are guided in a way down the right pathway to success, and it all starts with education. And I can't wait to see what we can do even beyond what we've done so far.
Next on, you mentioned energy. That's been a huge piece of discussion here this week as ALEC members are continuing to explore how to bring real, affordable, reliable energy to meet the demands that we know are going to be there on the electric grid, especially as we try to lead in AI and data centers and beat some of our adversaries around the world and stay ahead of the curve as Americans. You know, from an Indiana perspective, what's next on the energy policy front?
On the energy policy front, I'll tell you a funny story related to my Senate tenure. I didn't know, none of us knew, the utilities didn't know that there was going to be a thing called AI, voracious appetite for juice, electricity. And the demand for electricity was flat as a pancake until the Green New Deal came along. And I'll never forget, one of the biggest things I had to decide, and I did it with no advice on the spur of the moment, is when a Democrat in the Senate, Chris Coons, asked me if I were willing to start a climate caucus. I said, that's going to be tricky politically. Climate would clear the room on our side of the aisle. So I thought about it. I said, well, conservatives have not been in the conversation. And I said, yes. Got a few texts from back home, have you gone to the dark side? I said, well, I don't think so. I never get off the principles that guide me on anything. But if you want to be on the menu of discussion, and you're generally going to get some crazy idea, we navigated through all that in the discussion that puts me in a place now to understand those issues well, really came from that. That changed over time to now where I think the conservative point of view is all of the above, make sure we keep as much production in place as we navigate to what the new base load is going to be. In a state like ours, where we're way down the trail on renewables, you know, and we pretty well, county by county, staked out who's interested in it and more of it, and when only about 2% of it actually counts towards base load. Now, we were up at Purdue, and we are in the catbird seat on that new base load, which is probably going to be around SMRs, and that discussion started early in the Senate. And believe it or not, they wanted no discussion of it because they get twisted in their own thinking. Don't like greenhouse gases, don't like nuclear. Well, what do you like that you can actually afford? In a nutshell, they'll fight about that. States that are entrepreneurial, like ours, are going to be on the leading edge of all of the above. And for us, the only thing we have in Indiana that we own is coal. It may come around down the road. I'd love to see that generation stay online so that we're not trading kilowatts. But I intend to be on the leading edge of what that new base load is. We are in the catbird seat because of Purdue is the school that has got the most kind of foundation in that direction. So we'll see. I hope Indiana leads the way because now the demand for energy, electricity, looks like a hockey stick, not a pancake. And to me, that is opportunity.
Absolutely. Now, that's great to hear. So we talked a little bit about the education, freedom, revolution, and parental empowerment. Another big revolution shaping the states has been on tax reform and the flat tax revolution. Of course, Indiana's always had a flat tax. It's been one of the strong elements of Indiana's economic outlook. As you know, Indiana now ranks number third, third best in the nation in rich states, poor states for economic outlook. It didn't always used to be that way. Another former great executive of this state, Mitch Daniels. We have any Mitch Daniels fans in the audience? I think we probably do. I remember when we started in 2008, Indiana, I think, was 24th in rich states, poor states. That was before right to work. It was before many of the recent tax reductions. So you made some great progress. As you may have heard yesterday, we had Vivek Ramaswamy on this stage. We've had a great Ohio delegation. As a Michigander, it kind of pains me to say Ohio is becoming a leader in the Midwest. But Indiana's always been a leader. And, how do you stay ahead of the curve?
Fast and nimble. He's not going to outmaneuver Indiana. I'll just put it there. He's a youngster, okay? He's going to have to learn a few things, too, along the way.
Nobody's competitive here. You can tell it, Alex. So in terms of the next steps, Senator Holdman and others in the legislature have had the study committee over the last couple of years to analyze the tax code. Many states are looking to eliminate their income taxes or become more competitive in that direction. Ohio got to 2.75 in the flat tax this year. How does that shape your thinking kind of going forward for Indiana's competitiveness?
So the blessing for me in this job is I ran something in the real world for 37 years. And my cup of tea was finance. I gave Wall Street up because we wanted to move back to our hometown. She wanted her own business, which she's had now into the 47th year, going to go for 50. I learned so much about revenues, how you generate them, and controlling expenses. If you're not good at that, you're going to be on the ash heap in the business world. And then the beautiful thing about government, when I tell everyone it's so much easier than running a business, you are the monopoly. You don't have any competition. Businesses are never like that. If they are, they're regulated heavily, and they need to be. And your revenues are basically guaranteed each year. So you've got to make sure that you're doing things with your structural cash flow, and then you got to be smart enough to know that if you're wanting to do something of lowering it in one place, do you have an idea of how you're going to run things better to finance lowering that rate, and how are you going to balance it among your resources? That's going to be fairly easy, I think, because we're going to have a legislature that's thinking that same way. But if you're talking about eliminating something, just like an opponent did when I was running for governor, you'd have to say, well, where are you going to come up with the $8 billion if you got rid of the income tax? So you got to have the practicality of how you would replace it. And we have the blessing in almost all categories where we're low on regulation. We've got a low tax rate in general across the forms of taxation. And then I always get back to my good friend Rick Scott. He and I came in together after 8 years as governor of Florida. That was a turnaround project, more than Mitch's when he got here. That was a purple blue state, deeply in the red financially. It took him 1 year to turn it around. Now people are moving from New York to Florida, and Florida runs its government for half the cost of what New York does. So whenever you're talking about the revenue side, it's fairly structured in terms of the amount. To me, we'll get that balance correct. And property tax was the wrestling match we had this year. And I was surprised how much local governments and school districts were thinking maybe along the line of I always have to have more to get things done. Well, businesses that really are successful do more with less. That's called productivity. Government, it's not woven into its DNA. We'll find that right balance. And when it comes to what you do with revenue sources, just be careful that you're not doing something here that creates something that where you'd have to come with a plan elsewhere, and make sure you're streamlining government along the way. Because when I asked for all agencies to kind of reduce their budgets by 5%, of course, it helped us because we had a 5% bleaker budget forecast a week before we were inking it. So we were already in motion, and enterprising states like ours got the benefit of just in a few months of seeing our pro forma surplus of $14 million, which means nothing on a $23 billion budget. That has gone to, I think, $337 million. So in just a short period of time, everything we do, plus the budget was based upon a snapshot of tariffs, which I knew would dissipate over time. We're in a place where we're flexible. I think we understand revenue and cost control, and that's the key to running a successful business or government.
Well, thank you for that. And it's a key message of ALEC always is balancing taxes and spending, two sides of the fiscal coin, as we always say. And on that front, I know Indiana's had a model balanced budget amendment in the Constitution now, thanks to our Senator Jim Buck and many of the legislators here that helped spearhead that effort a number of years ago. It's become a piece of ALEC model policy. So if you're looking to strengthen your state's balanced budget, look no further than Indiana in your Constitution.
I had the pleasure of voting for that the last year in the House, and then they got it across the finish line the next year. So thank goodness. I just wish our federal counterparts would start thinking that way.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, more on that in a second. I want to ask you about health care. That's been an area I know as you and I have talked, and you chaired our ALEC policy effort there for the ALEC 50th anniversary just a couple of years ago. You thought about that a lot at the federal level, and then coming in as governor, you issued an executive order on price transparency for hospitals, something near and dear to us at ALEC. We have great ALEC model legislation in that area as well. Talk a little bit about that, bringing real market discipline to healthcare, starting with price signals and other things you're thinking about.
Just didn't complete. We got a few more of them, but I've been holding a roundtable session with hospital CEOs. Let's look at the healthcare system. 10 years ago, 15, it was about 1/3 practitioners, doctors and nurses. Now that's down to maybe under 20%. So many have had to monetize their clinics by selling to hospitals. Hospitals used to be 1/3 of that healthcare dollar. Practitioners 1/3. The other third split between pharma and the administrative side of healthcare, which we need to take down to a lot lower level than what it currently is, insurance. Insurance was intended for indemnification, not running every little scratch and dent through with a claim that they make a fortune on that impedes the providers from doing their job. The proudest thing I've done in business or government was 17 years ago when I sat in on the renewal meeting after we had gone from 20 employees in '98 to 300 in '08. Song and dance every year, how lucky you are, it's only going up 5 to 10%. I wasn't going to let HR bring the bad news back to me again, that it went up another 5 to 10%. The only way to mitigate it was raising your deductibles or changing underwriters every 3 years. I was tired of that. So in that get-together, the first question I asked the insurance company, and this is a focus we're going to take in our own state government, I said, what was your profit margin on our plan? They never had anyone ask that. I was stroking $1 million check for a fully insured plan that just kept getting more expensive, and we had a wonderful claims profile. So I could tell what they were doing. Peer group pricing, was tired of it. I fleshed out some honesty that day. 25% profit margin. You got to be selling something illicit for that, because you're not in a market. No market will give you that kind of return. If it's transparent, no barriers to entry, and especially an engaged consumer. In a nutshell, I'd give anyone the free consulting outside of this. It'd take too long. Became the insurance company, not to mention I shed the 7% commission of the agent, which was $70,000, and then turned it into a system of wellness and prevention and consumerism on minor health care. That's what I was preaching to our healthcare CEOs. And I said, you now are the most important thing because you're employing a lot of the docs. And unless you want Bernie Sanders to be your business partner, which is happening sadly in a whimper. In our own state, IU Health, one of the largest systems in the country, has now got the government through Medicare and Medicaid 70% as its payor. 10 years ago, it was 45%. So they are getting their way. I asked them, save yourself from that. Help me make you more entrepreneurial. Embrace transparency. Get rid of the barriers to entry. If doctors want to own hospitals or do things on their own, view that as a way to disrupt it. Amazingly, finally, they're starting to realize if they don't help, they're going to lead themselves into a one-payer system. So I am looking forward to that. I've spent so much time on it. And any of you not had a premium increase in the last 17 years on your health care plan?
Didn't see any
I know,
hands.
that's a joke line. Come put an application into the company I ran for 37 years. We've held healthcare costs now through the buyer side of insurance, not the supply side really helping much, now for 17 years. Proudest thing I've done. We're going to weave that through our own state employee plan and get Indiana from one of the highest healthcare cost states to hopefully one of the lowest, with hospitals helping me and insurance better come along. They're an unnecessary administrative cost other than indemnifying against catastrophic loss, not being the mover and shaker that eats up so much of our resources, not to mention PBMs. Buckle up, watch us, we're just beginning.
Wow.
Thank you.
Well, as you can tell, we could keep this conversation going a long time, and it's a great conversation. We're going to have you back, Governor Braun, but thank you for your leadership as a strong voice for Indiana. I think what Governor Braun here proves that common sense policy ideas absolutely will continue to work. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you again, Governor Braun. Isn't he phenomenal? What a common sense leader for Indiana. And one thing we ran out of time to talk about that the governor may not even know about, just yesterday, our Tax and Fiscal Policy Task Force endorsed Indiana Senate Resolution 51, calling on the federal government to balance its budget just like Indiana does. And I know we have Indiana State Comptroller Elise Nishala with us, and thank you so much, Comptroller, for being with us and partnering with that on an important effort. Well, less than a year from today, we will mark America's 250th birthday. And across the country, groups are commemorating this historic occasion in their own unique ways, honoring our founding fathers and extraordinary sacrifices they made to secure American freedom that we enjoy to this day. We at ALEC have launched the States 250 campaign, as you might have noticed this week, a national effort to highlight the role that states have played in securing our liberty, defending constitutional government, and making America the extraordinary nation it is today. We do this because we believe the best way to honor these 250 years of independence is by reminding people that the same spirit of freedom and governance is alive and well right here in your states every single year. And that is why ALEC is proud to partner with our friends at PragerU in their incredible exhibit, the Founders Museum, The Road to Liberty. This powerful project was officially unveiled at the White House earlier this year and delivers the story of America's founding life in schools, communities, and state houses across the country. And as you might have noticed, we have had the honor of hosting several of these exhibits right here this week at the ALEC annual meeting. If you maybe have paid more attention to the ALEC policy on this area, our Education and Workforce Development Task Force has just endorsed a resolution later today honoring America's 250th that you can take to your state to take this effort back home. Organizations like the Heritage Foundation, under the leadership of Dr. Kevin Roberts, have also stepped up to celebrate this historic milestone for our country, to remind Americans why our founding principles still matter. Through initiatives like America's 250th Innovation Prizes and a curated collection of historical materials, Heritage is helping to tell the story of our nation and why those founding principles continue to endure. More than a policy expert, Dr. Kevin Roberts is a historian, a strategist, and a tireless defender of American exceptionalism. He understands the best way to preserve freedom is to empower the institutions that made that possible in the first place: faith, family, community, and yes, federalism. Recently, as part of our ALEC States 250 effort, we've gone back and made an effort as an organization at our staff, and if you've heard us talk about this effort, a challenge to everyone to go back and reread the Declaration of Independence, to learn those first principles and lessons that Dr. Roberts is going to be talking about today. He's leading the Heritage Charge to make sure that this 250th celebration is not just about flags and fireworks, but about reaffirming the ideas that launched this great experiment in liberty. Please join me in welcoming the president of the Heritage Foundation, Dr. Kevin Roberts.
Y'all are way too kind. Thanks so much. How about a round of applause for Jonathan Williams, his great leadership. I've known Lisa Nelson for a while, ever since I moved from doing education full-time to doing policy full-time. Even though she's still young and dashing and beautiful, she's a great mentor. Round of applause for Lisa and her great leadership at ALEC. And West Virginia Senator Patricia Rucker, thanks for your own leadership at ALEC and what you do in your state. I start with an apology, and it's an apology to my really good friend, the governor of Indiana, Mike Braun, for wearing a tie, sir. I just, the way I was raised on what we now call the Gulf of America, we're supposed to wear that in the presence of great men. You're a great man, but your wife, the First Lady of Indiana, is an even greater lady. So thank you all for being here and for your leadership. Really, all kidding aside, and to jump right in, the witness of Governor Braun and the First Lady is exactly what America needs. And that's what I'm going to home in on here. It is a combination of honoring our founding with common sense leadership in Indiana, along with, as I happen to know the governor well enough personally to say this, rooting that common sense, not just in a love for America, a great patriotism, but in faith. And I'm here to tell you, for all of my legislator friends in the room, and thank you for your own service, that if in fact we miss this opportunity in front of us, not just over the next 11 and a half months to celebrate this wonderful anniversary, but over the next several years, over the next several decades, then we have no business doing what we're doing, either at the Heritage Foundation or, and I don't mean this to be sharp at all, I mean this as a friend, in your own elective service. And what gives us great encouragement, real excitement at Heritage and Heritage Action is to see the selfless service of all of you in elective office. And so the comments that I have today, yeah, I'll comment a little bit on America 250 to honor my friendship with Lisa and Jonathan. But as you might expect the president of the Heritage Foundation to do, I might have some thoughts about 10 policy things you can do, if you haven't already done them in your states, in order to secure America's future. The left does not like it when I say this, but that's because they've lost their sense of humor and they have no understanding of early American history. I can say that as an early American history professor. We are in the Second American Revolution. We are in the Second American Revolution. I don't mean that there needs to be bloodshed. Although the left, if you spend some time in Washington, D.C., around Capitol Hill and outside the Heritage Foundation every Monday, you know that these people are getting more and more violent. My point is, our point at Heritage, the way Governor Braun is leading Indiana with the great help of his legislator friends, is that we are renewing sovereignty and self-governance and faith in fellow man. And the way we're doing that, of course, starts with really good policy in our state capitals. But all of us know here, regardless of what our faith is or isn't, that if in fact upstream of politics and policy, our institutions aren't healthy, then our jobs in policy and politics will be that much harder. And so in this list of 10, there may be a quiz at some point down the road. You know how we operate at Heritage. The first thing that we have to focus on as policymakers, whether elected or informal advisors on the outside, is to remember the most important institution in society. And it's an institution that was so healthy, so vibrant at the time of our founding, in the 1760s and early 1770s leading up to signing the Declaration, that we would not have had a successful revolution without it. And that's the nuclear family. And so at Heritage, for the better part of 18 months, as then Senator Braun knew, we've been trying to figure out what's the appropriate role of public policy, whether at the federal level or state level or local level, to arrest declining birth rates, to arrest declining marriage rates. Because let me just tell you, and this won't surprise you because you know the Heritage Foundation's position on immigration. Immigration, legal or illegal, is not the solution to declining birth rates. It is very important we understand, as much as we honor immigrants, to some extent or another, we all are, right? Or at least ancestors of them, that we must understand the health of the family determines the health of the republic. And so I would encourage you, and obviously we're very happy to help you from the research side of this, to think about pilot programs that you would do at the state level or maybe at the local level. Maybe you pick one county or two, maybe with block granted money from Washington, D.C., to figure out how we can address those problems. I'll be really honest with you and tell you we don't have all of the answers to this at Heritage. That's not something we always say. Because this is, while a long-running problem, something that we recognize is a civilizational crisis. And so keeping that framing in mind, whatever you decide to do, I think is helpful in moving on to point number 2. To make a prediction, which I probably shouldn't do as an early American historian. My colleagues, many of whom are here, say, Kevin, just stay focused on the past. Let us deal with the future. My prediction is in 2028, one of the top 3 deciding issues in that race will be the cost of housing in this country. Now, you can go down that path and sound like a particular mayoral candidate in New York City. That's not the path we at ALEC or Heritage are going to take, right? But you can also recognize, just being intellectually honest as a public policy person, that part of the diagnosis is something that we as conservatives and freedom lovers ought to pay attention to. And it is the case that it takes 3.5 times more income today than it did in 1985 to afford a starter house for a newly married couple. Regulation has a lot to do with that. The infiltration of 21 million illegal aliens in the last 4 years has something to do with that. environmental guidelines, which have nothing to do with our love for the environment or the common sense, smart, conservationist attitude that Mike Braun has taken to that policy. It's about control. And so I would encourage you, especially at the state level, to be viewing those environmental guidelines not just as nonsense from the Green New scam, but as one of the sources of overpriced housing that is a barrier to Americans living the American dream. And ultimately, that's the connection between this policy agenda that Heritage has set out and America 250. And that is the greatest metric that we can guide our work by, yours and ours, is that at some point later in the 2020s or in the 2030s, a vast, vast majority of Americans are going to wake up and say, the American dream is alive for me. Because over the last 3 years, by Pew and by Gallup, a minority of Americans have said that. Point 3, the governor touched on this well, so it's important, but I'll be brief about it. As conservatives, being part of the conversation about being conservationists, that is our policy inheritance. That's not something the left has come up with. But understanding that without subsidies, without artificial interventions into the market, that if we take this all of the above approach, we also have to be honest with ourselves, especially in our legislative sessions, that for the last decade, even in red states, we have given preferential treatment to fickle energy sources, as wonderful as they may seem. And that harms humans. Just ask the Spanish people right now, who literally are on the brink of a civil rebellion because of the nonsense of their prime minister with net zero. Ask the Europeans every winter who are running out of energy, unless they happen to be in a place like France, which has a lot of nuclear reactors. The answer here is really clear, but we would encourage you from Heritage to follow the lead of Secretary Burgum yesterday, who said, while we love this all of the above approach, this is America after all, the time has come to end the preferential treatment through subsidies and permitting and regulations for these artificial industries. You probably didn't expect me, as an early American historian, talking about America 250 to talk about green energy subsidies. But it is, all kidding aside, it's directly related to the inability of Americans to afford the American dream. So I encourage you to be bolder than you've ever been in fixing that problem. Fourth, and here I will be blunt, perhaps even bellicose. China, the Chinese Communist Party, is the greatest adversary in the history of this country, including Great Britain during the American Revolution. You must do everything in your power. You must do everything in your power, yes, at the state level, to participate in weakening the Chinese Communist Party. Lobbyists should not be allowed to work for the CCP in your state capitals. The CCP should not infiltrate our institutions of higher education. And pardon me, but they damn well shouldn't be able to own land in this country. Fifth, we love immigrants and immigration at Heritage, but we are in a crisis. Thank God for Donald Trump and his administration for beginning to fix it. But if you ask yourself the question, what can we do at the state level to accelerate this first chapter in reforming a long, terrible story about our immigration system? We might suggest at Heritage that you run your own censuses and count only citizens. Hans von Spakovsky is here. He's very happy to help you with that. We would also encourage you today, if you're not already doing it, understanding that sanctuary cities and runaway municipalities really are standing in the way of our former Heritage colleague Tom Homan doing his job, that you require at the state level that local law enforcement agencies sign a letter with the Department of Homeland Security to participate in the 287G program. This is the only way that the federal government is going to be able to remove, as President Trump has said is our goal, all 200,000 of the felons we know among that group. This is something that you can do, and obviously we stand ready to help. Sixth, something that's close to my heart because my adopted hometown is Austin, Texas, a once great place that's been taken over by Marxists. When we have cities like Austin or Nashville or other capital cities whose local government is not representative of the will of the people, decharter them and establish them as state municipal districts in the name of common sense. If you ask me, yeah, that'll make the news. We can provide air cover too. That's a promise if you do that. If you ask me, Kevin, what's the biggest threat to this common sense agenda that Trump and Vance have laid out and that we all agree with mostly? It's that. It's that there are government entities that illegitimately are imposing something other than the American dream on their people. Seventh, eighth, and ninth all have to do with education. My Texas legislator friends know that I think education is the end-all be-all. I'm a fifth-generation teacher. But number 7 is, it's great that we passed school choice. God bless you for doing it, don't get me wrong. But now it's time to focus on the content, because the content is still questionable. And I would encourage you to do something really revolutionary. Eliminate the SAT and ACT in your states and add in their place the classic learning test as the achievement test of record. Eighth, if you haven't done it already, make teacher licensure one of the easiest things to get for people who are qualified with a college degree and business experience. And yes, Randy Weingarten will hate it, which means that it's a great idea. And ninth, having been a president of a college, albeit a small one, while I'm tempted to tell you that the best reform to higher ed would be ending faculty tenure, I want you all to be reelected, and so I won't say that. Although I will tell you from the inside, tenure reform should happen. I will instead say something that maybe you've thought about, maybe you haven't. It's underappreciated as the source of power. End the accreditation cartel of the regional accreditors. They're both rackets. They are both rackets, tenure and the accreditation cartel, that protect vile, vulgar things that shouldn't be around, like anti-Semitism. Finally, number 10 is a question, and it's my concluding question. You've done great work in policy. You want to do more great work in policy, and the most important thing I have to say to all of you today, starting with the governor, is our sincere gratitude from the Heritage Enterprise for what you do, truly. We love what you do, and when you need anything, we're there for you. But next year, Heritage will again be publishing, for the first time in over a decade, the Index of Cultural Flourishing. We have the Index of Economic Freedom, which is an international publication of economic freedom of different countries. Not surprisingly, the United States has been slipping. We have the Index of Military Strength, very important, especially right now, as Secretary Hegseth leads a great reform of the Pentagon. We have, as many of you know, indices on election integrity, on education freedom. In a lot of ways, as Jonathan and Lisa would say about their own similar products, those are the most helpful things to you. But the reason we're reprising the Index of Cultural Flourishing is to provide data for this question. Is everything we're doing in public policy at the state level, at the federal level, at the local level, in the spirit of the 250th birthday of the greatest civil society ever known to man, focused on allowing families and individuals to flourish, not just economically, but also very importantly, socially and culturally, and if they so choose, religiously? If we start thinking about all of our policy decisions through that lens, then I can tell you that America's 250th birthday next year will actually be the beginning of a second 250th period in which we continue to be the last best hope in the world. God bless you. Thank you for your work.
Please welcome ALEC 2025 National Chair, West Virginia Senator Patricia Rucker.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts, for that incredible reminder of why the work we do matters so deeply. Under your guidance, the Heritage Foundation has helped ensure that this next chapter of our history will be just as bold as the first. And we thank you for sponsoring this morning's breakfast and for your unwavering defense of Americans' founding principles. And to everyone here, thank you. Thank you for getting up early. Thank you for being here. And thank you for being part of ALEC, for being part of the greatest experiment in freedom the world has ever known. I know that it may sound a little bit old-fashioned, but as someone whose native country has become a place where I cannot return, I can tell you, standing up for liberty, for limited government, and for the rule of law deserve to be applauded. Thank you. In less than a year, we will celebrate America's 250th birthday. And through ALEC State's 250 campaign, we are shining a light on the golden age of America, on the people, the ideas, and the institutions that made this country exceptional. And more importantly, we're reminding the nation that the next great chapter of liberty will be written in the state houses by leaders like you. On your tables, there is a card. Please, please, please take it with you. We don't want to see any left behind. Take all of them, pass them out. This gives you a timeline of U.S. statehood, and it also gives you an easy way to be part of the incredible program that we at ALEC are doing to help you take advantage and help spread the news about how great America is. So carry your energy from this morning into the meetings and communities and everything that you do. The future of the freedom really depends on it. There are more great things to do today, more great sessions and task forces, as you can see up on the board. So please check your apps, check the programs, and we'll see you here at lunch this afternoon. Have a great morning.